Hi, and welcome to the Law Simplified. I'm Shaveen Bandaranaike. Throughout the Masterclass programs, as well as the fast track problem solving, as well as exam preparation technique sessions that I have with most of my students, either through Skype, Google Hangouts, or even on Udemy, as well as on YouTube, a question that I get posed quite often is actually quite a superficial one. And I wanted to make a quick video to address something and maybe to give you an understandable analogy to see exactly how these questions or problem-based questions in either LLB, GDL, or any other UK common law degree is structured, so that you have a better understanding on how to tackle them. Now, most of these students, they tend to ask me, the very first thing they tend to ask me is A, do I need to memorize case law? B, how many cases should I use in any question, in particular topics that I'm attempting? And C, do I need to mention statutes? If so, how many provisions do I need to mention, and so on. Now, by no means am I saying that these questions are wrong. As a law student, as someone who's perhaps coming into this for the first time, these are very important as well as perplexing questions that you might have. So I wanted to make a video to sort of distill any notions that might be there, any misconceptions on how exactly you should answer questions. Now, having said that, small disclaimer, these are not guaranteed techniques that if you follow these things to a letter, every single LLB is going to be a 2-1 or a first class for you. However, if you are a student that's struggling to understand how to structure questions, this is going to be one of the perfect videos for you to go back on every time you attempt a question to see if you've gone through these, let's say, the checklist, so to speak. The analogy that I spoke of earlier is that whenever you are answering a question, a problem-based question specifically, always think of it as if you are filling a jar with rocks, pebbles, and sand. What I mean by this is, you might have seen online plenty of examples or life lessons that motivational speakers go through on what you need to incorporate into your life and how you need to incorporate it. This is quite similar to that. And this is actually based on some advice as well as input and insights that have been provided to me personally, as well as to several other students in my program as well, by multiple first-class honors graduates from various universities in the UK, some of whom their insights you can check out for yourself if you check out the banner that will appear right about this video. You can link to that and have a look at it as well. What I mean by filling a jar with rocks, pebbles, and sand is that there is essentially an order in which you should do it in order to enrich and fulfill your jar. For example, if you fill it with sand first, and then pebbles, and then the rocks, chances are you're going to have many of the rocks left out, because they'll be sufficient to fill the sand, fill the pebbles, but not the rocks. The ideal way to fill a jar is to first fill it with the large rocks, then with the pebbles so that it fills in the little crevasses that are left, and then finally the sand, which will fill up the entire jar. Answering a problem-based question in a law degree, GDL or LLB, is no different. Consider the large chunks or the large rocks as being your arguments, your principles, the law itself, and how you articulate them, your main story that you're trying to communicate to the examiner. Think of the pebbles as being facts that elevate your answer. It might be the problem question itself, or it might be facts from other examples or similar cases. Finally, the sand are essentially the provisions that you're using from the statutes, the case law, the principles within the case laws themselves, of course, the names and whatnot. Now, you'll notice that I've allocated the cases, the case names, the statute, the provisions, all of that, all the technicalities to the last bit, to the sand. The reason why is whenever an examiner looks at your answer script, your argument, your story, the articulation, your analytical thinking, that is what takes precedence. That's the number one thing they look at, and that's the number one thing that's most important in your answer. That's represented by the large chunks, so the most important thing, the rocks. The pebbles, on the other hand, what the examiners look for is, do you understand the fact that has been presented to you? Do you see the little nuances and the problems that have been shown to you in the question? It might be in relation to the parties involved, it might be in relation to the situation at large, and so on. However, the last thing that the examiners will consider, but will also consider nonetheless, are the case names, the provisions, the statutes, and so on. Think of the large chunks, the rocks, the main articulating points as being the fundamental basis or the foundation of your answer. That's going to give you the biggest chunk of marks. The better you are in that, the more marks or the better grade that you will gather. The pebbles, on the other hand, will further enrich your answer. Your examiner will notice that you have read around as well as understand the question that's been provided to you, the facts in itself. Finally, the sand, as represented by the cases, are just there to take you above and beyond. Now you'll notice the way that I have communicated this to you, regardless of having the case names correctly or regardless of having the provisions accurately or there at all, you can still get through your examination. What's most important is your argument, is the story and how you have communicated it to the examiner. To take you above and beyond, that's where the cases come in. Now, having said that, you must not forget to include case law or principles for that matter. But it doesn't hurt if you essentially don't mention those. But if you start with it, if you start only by focusing on the case names, on the provisions, and then completely subjugate or omit to talk about your story, the chances are your grade will suffer because of it. Now, with this in mind, you need to understand that if you were at a pass level, you could go to a 2-2. If you are at a 2-2 level, you could go to a 2-1, which is a second upper. And if you are at a 2-1 level, adding those little elements, the sand, so to speak, will take you from a 2-1 to a first class. So this was a very quick video just to outline, because I've been getting a lot of questions on this regard. If you have further questions and if you want to schedule a masterclass or a fast tech program so that we can break down questions together and figure out how best you can tackle an examination, because it's not just about the theory, it's about how you put pen to paper. Make sure you get in touch with me through the links in the description in this video. But until such time, as always, have fun, stay safe, and obey the law.